Namaste to all the delegates. First, let me thank the organizers, Professor Michel Donino and Ravindranath, for inviting me for this conference. The alternate title is not visible. Maybe it will come out. The reason is this. Dr. Donino mentioned that I could talk about Dhruva, the work of Dhruva, which I have been working for quite a few years. But then the conference is about Harappan civilization. And I wanted to show, perhaps towards the end, that there is a temporal overlap between the Harappan and the Vedic. So my alternate title is Temporal Overlap Between Vedic and Harappan. Already a few people have tried to highlight this. See, the story of child Prince Dhruva is too well known to all of us, all over India. It is a legend, it is a story probably said in religious functions as a pravachan. That is the story of the child who did penance, got a boon from Viṣṇu to become the pole star. The name Dhruva comes from that word pole star. He became the pole star. So the story says that he is going to remain as the pole star till the end of the world. And also in the Purāṇas, you would see that his mother also got a boon. That is, his mother Suniti. I will not go into the total story. She would also remain with him as a star. That is the story in the Viṣṇu Purāṇa. Now, you can trace this story actually backwards to the Brahmāṇḍa Purāṇa from where it is taken. Now, in Sanskrit, you know that Dhruva means fixed, stable, steadfast, true. It has such shades of meaning, unchanging. So it can be used for a mountain, it can be used for bhumi, which is supposed to be fixed, or a tree, depending on what it has to qualify. But our story is not about any of that, but it is about the star. It is about the pole star that was supposed to have stationed steadfast as Dhruva. Now, if you take the children, if they ask a question about it, you would take them to the planetarium and show the Dhruva star in the planetarium today, or maybe in the night, if you are knowledgeable enough, you can show there is a star which remains fixed, which doesn't move in the night with reference to the other stars. That is the important thing. But Purāṇa did not mean this star. Purāṇa meant Dhruva, of course, but a single star cannot be identified without relation to other stars. So the present star is in the constellation called Ursa Minor, which later Siddhantic astronomers tried to call Dhruva Matsya, which has 7 stars. Purāṇa did not mean this. Why is that so? There was no pole star when the Purāṇas were scripted. Purāṇas were scripted, as you know, put up in script, somewhere around 400 AD or 500 AD, maybe slightly before that. And there was no pole star during that time at all. And Purāṇa describes a Dhruva which matches not with the Ursa Minor, but with a constellation, which I hope you'll be able to see in the diagram, which is called Draco. Nearly matches with that. Now, how good it is has to be investigated. That is the story that I am going to tell you. And also it is important that in the Purāṇas, all the 14 stars are named, and it has to follow a figure called Śiśumāra, which is an aquatic animal, the 4-legged aquatic animal. Whereas the Ursa Minor, even the meaning is supposed to be a little bear. It doesn't look like that. Whereas the Draco, or the dragon as it is called, roughly looks like that, and it has 14 stars. I will come to the details of that. And also please note, there is a constraint. Next to whoever is Dhruva, there has to be another small star to be called Suniti. Now, if there were no pole star during Brahmāṇḍa Purāṇa and Viṣṇu Purāṇa time, how did they imagine that there is going to be a pole star? There will be 14 stars which would look like a Śiśumāra. Śiśumāra means a whale. Let us roughly take it like that. Or is it something different? In fact, the Purāṇas describe what is called the Meru-centric astronomy, where the Earth is connected to Dhruva through a pole called Meru, which of course in the Jain cosmology is very famous. Without the Dhruva, it is famous there. Whereas in Sanskrit cosmology and the Indian Vedic cosmology, there is a pole which is imaginary. So we can infer, or at least hypothesize, Purāṇa should have recorded some ancient memories. And from where the ancient memories have come is the question for my investigation. And why should it have happened? Why some star I am seeing today, and why do you claim, I am putting a question to myself, that there was some other star as a pole star? Actually, modern astronomy says that. I am not telling that. That is, the Earth's axis rotates, as Earth rotates, the axis wobbles. There is a precession. Precession of the axial precession of the Earth is the reason, and different pole stars come into the view of human beings. And modern astronomy also says, during 3200 BC approximately, a star which we today call Thuban in the Draco constellation was the pole star. And that is what the Egyptians built for their pyramids. That is the rough story which is there, which you can easily search by a Google search. That is called Thuban today, or astronomers would call it α-Draconis. Now, if you are lucky, let me run this. It won't take more than a minute. You can see what is this precession. See the Earth and the vertical line which is there, please follow that. The red line is sun's movement. We are not so much worried about that. And the vertical arrow with which you can see the north celestial pole, and any star which will be visible at the top as the arrow extends, that will be the pole star during a particular time. But that itself creates a circle of 27,000 years. 27,000 years. That is the third motion which Earth has as a spinning rigid body. So if you see that in plan, today's pole star was shown there, and that Dhruva will be Dhruva again after 27,000 years. But before that, there is another pole star. So the whole of my approach to chronology has been that if at all we are going to claim that we have a long history, maybe more than 2,000, 3,000 years, precession should have had some effect on our culture. Is it possible to locate it? Of course, I came by a serendipitous route, not directly so logically like that, but that is what I'm going to explain. So for the Purāṇa, where is it? I'll quickly cover my story. The most ancient reference to Dhruva, Śiśumāra, and the 14 stars in a Vedic text called the Taittirīya Āraṇyaka. Taittirīya Āraṇyakam belongs to the Krishna Yajurveda, and this text is very popular, particularly in South India, and this mantra is used for meditation because it comes from the part called the Svadhyaya Brahmanam. So what does it say? I will not go into the whole of the mantra, but some of it you will easily be able to understand in any Indian language. It starts with Namaha, then it says Shiro, then Dharmo Murdhanam, Brahma Uttara Hanuhu, Yajnaha Adhara, Viṣṇuhu Hridayam. Viṣṇu is in the Hridaya, heart. Samvatsaraha Prajananam. It goes like that. Purva Paro, Atrihi, Mitra Varno, Aparapado, then Puchasya. Pucha is tile. The tile first part, Prathamam Kandam, Agni, then Tata Indra, then comes Indra, then Prajapati, and Chaturtham is Abhaya. The fourth star on the tile is called Abhaya or fearless or fearless. This Abhaya became the Dhruva, and the mantra goes further. It itself says, Savayesha Divyaha Śākvara Śiśumāra is the mantra itself. This is the celestial Divya Śākvara, the animal called Śiśumāra. And the mantra goes further, Dhruvastvamasi, Dhruvasya Kshatimasi. You are the Dhruva, you are the fixed person, people go around you, all the people go around you, etc., etc. This is the foundation of one particular branch of our culture. And I have listed the names of the stars here, and it's, you can say, the anatomy where the star has to be found. Sayanacharya, the commentator on this, also says that this, he was in the 14th century CE, very recent, about 600 years back, that this should be used in the evening prayers. Now, what is meant by fixed here? In the left figure, you can see that, here, this is the other pole. I am showing the north celestial pole, not the ecliptic pole. Previously, I showed the ecliptic pole and the polar circle. Here, I am showing the north celestial pole. And you would see a figure like this, something which is showing a face here, and this point is the Dhruva. So imagine that I put a nail and put a figure there, and I rotate it, the nail part remains there itself. It will be like a hinge, it will be rotating. So in the night, this is going to rotate in the night. That is from evening till morning, one can see the other stars moving, but not this star. Today, this constellation is idealized as Draco, the dragon figure is shown. And this was possible only in 3000 BC, approximately in 3000 BC. And we have done some further work on this. This is what is called the declination. The declination has to be 90 degrees for it to be the pole star, but the declination changed. Before 2830 BC, it was something different. Then it became almost 90. Then it went on changing. On this side, I have put up the terrestrial latitude. That is the name of the cities. For example, Kanchipuram is here about 12 degrees latitude, then Ujjaini about 25, Kurukshetra about 30. Just keep this in mind because I will come back to this issue a little bit later. Now, if something was fixed, and as we are showing in this diagram, it changed its position, the declination changed. But even then, it can be rotating about the pole only. They are called what are called the circumpolar stars. So this was a circumpolar star. There are many circumpolar stars even today which would go around the pole. That means at any season in the year, they would be visible, but they are not pole stars. They will not be at the center. Today, of course, Ursa Minor is the pole star, but the star around it is circumpolar. It will be going around that. Our astronomers exploited this information around 1500 AD. I will come to that. Now, the same thing, if I put it in another way, again the polar circle. Reason is, I want to bring out the history here, the chronology as we have been calling, and the backbone of the chronology is an arcuate backbone. 2000 AD is here. 0 is here, that is the common era. Minus 2000 is here, then minus 4000 is here. Now minus 3000 approximately is the pole star, which is called Abhaya, and our text call it Dhruva. Taittirīya Āraṇyaka called it Abhaya Dhruva. Whereas today we are having here, that is also called Dhruva by people today. As the property, both are correct. But if it changed, is there any change which was perceived by human beings in India in our text? So we have to see the textual stratigraphy on this. and see how it has been described. Yes, it has been done. For example, the Taittirīya Samhita, then there are other texts of the Yajurveda text. There is a sacrifice which is done called Agnishtoma with a Dhruva Graha or Dhruva Sthālī. There is also a Abhichara mentioned, that is a black magic related to Dhruva Graha. I will come to it in the next slide because it is important and it has been ignored. But more importantly, in the Maitreya Āraṇyaka, that's also a Vedic text, the king Brihadratha questions the sage why Dhruva is moving. Dhruvasya prachalanam. Why even Dhruva is moving? So he is a kind of very sad that everything is transient, the world is changing, the nakshatras are falling, Dhruva is also moving, earth is shaking. Tell me what is permanent in this world. Then of course the Vedanta starts and all those things. But there is an important information in this Maitreya Āraṇyaka which is not connected with Dhruva but with the season, with the winter solstice. So the winter solstice started at the time when a nakshatra called Shravishta was half in the, when the sun rose, it was 50% of that nakshatra. It is a stretch. The details will be too complicated, I will not go into that. But that can be dated approximately to about 1800 BC. You know that some of you might have known about the Vedanga Jyotisha of Lagada, when Dhanishtadi was the winter solstice. It has been approximately dated to 1300 BC. This was about 400 years before that, roughly about. These are all rough figures only. So there is a mention that Dhruva was moving. Then there are other important mentions. One of the important mention is by Shankaracharya, who is a very famous philosopher. I need not explain about him. He discusses about Viṣṇu in one of his commentaries, and he says Viṣṇu has to be identified with the star, Viṣṇur Hridayam. He quotes the Taittirīya Āraṇyaka text as iti Shrutihi, and Dhruva is at the tail of that Śiśumāra. The text is available in print, that is the commentary on the Viṣṇu Sahasranama Bhashya, which is part of Mahabharata. So you see, Mahabharata comes into picture somewhere there. And then there are others also who comment on this. Alberuni, a foreigner in the 11th century, has written two books, one on India, that is Indica. The other one, he translated the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, where there is a statement on Dhruve Tadgati Jnanam. That is, if you concentrate on Dhruva, you will understand his movements. And his informant said, this Dhruva is in Śiśumāra, which has 14 stars, and he ridicules Hindus, telling that these people think their pole star is in an animal called Śiśumāra, which is called in Persian Susmar. So this is again an evidence for this. Then later, it is the time already of the Siddhantic astronomers. So Siddhantic astronomers, they kept quiet on Śiśumāra. They knew Dhruva, they knew Dhruvaka, which was a polar coordinate, but their Dhruva for Brahmagupta, Bhaskara and others was Dhruva Matsya. That means they imagined this Ursa Minor as a fish, and they tried to put not the pole star, it was very near, it was not exactly at the pole. And here came, in the 17th century, an astronomer in Banaras by name Kamalakar Bhatta. He has a Siddhanta called the Siddhanta Tattva Viveka. He questions which star should be shown to the bride. You see the figure here? See, the brides have to be shown the Dhruva Darshanam they have to do as per the Grihya Sutra. So which star to be shown? And he gives the coordinates of the star, which becomes the present day Polaris. So there is a lot of information which goes into this, and this is a bit, and then I will close my talk. In the Taittirīya Samhita, you may question that the Taittirīya Āraṇyaka was one star. Is in the Veda there is nothing else? There is actually. In the Taittirīya Samhita first Kanda, there is the Agnishtoma, and there are 9 Sthālīs or Grahas which have to be taken out for the Pratas Samana. that is the cups, 9 cups have to be done. The 9th cup is called the Dhruva cup, and that Dhruva cup is kept in the north only, not in the south. And the mantra for that starts with a Rigvedic mantra. This is the 6th kanda, Murdhanam, Divya Aratim, Prithivya, etc., etc. And then there is a mantra for Dhruva which says, Dhruva Kshitihe, Dhruvanam, Dhruvatamaha, Achyutanam, Achyutakshititamaha. Partly the same mantra which we saw in the previous Taittirīya Āraṇyaka. But the peculiar thing with the Vedas, as many of you may be knowing, Samhitas give some mantra, but the explanation and the actual practice will be in the Brahmana part and also in the Shrauta Sutra part. So unless you collect all of this, you will not make the meaning out of it. But the explanation for this mantra, fortunately, is in the 6th book of the Taittirīya Samhita only. That is called the Taittirīya Samhita Brahmana part. Ayurva etad yajnase yad dhruva uttamo grahan. The meaning, he says, is, the reason is, asura va uttarataha prithivim paryachikirshan. The asuras, the negative forces, let us not think of them as rakshas or demons, they wanted to turn the prithvi. They wanted to paryachikirshan, they wanted to turn the prithvi. Tan deva dhruvena adramhanta. The gods fixed him with the help of Dhruva. And that is why Dhruvasya Dhruvatam. That is why Dhruva has got his name. The translation is same. Even Keith has gives the same translation. Asuras from above attempted to turn the earth around. The gods firmed it up with Dhruva. That is how Dhruva got its name. For Dhruva is placed in the north for fixity. So in other words, the Dhruva Graha which is used in the Agnishtoma is a cup, of course, but there is we can say a congruence or a similarity between what is in the sky with what is in the ground as far as the sacrifice is concerned. Now, all the Yajurveda texts have similar rituals. I will not go into the details. The Maitrayani Samhita, Kata Samhita also have that. But the Maitrayani Samhita is an extra thing. It does suggest abhichara, that is black magic. If you want to remove a king, if you want to remove a leader, you turn the Dhruva cup so that the leader will come down or the king will come down. So that is the kind of practice which is suggested there. So in any case, they had the idea of a fixed Dhruva. They also had the idea of something which is moving, something which is not stationary. So since I am talking to archaeologists, I thought I should put up a kind of a stratigraphy of Dhruva. So the stratigraphy of Dhruva is like this. The 2000 CE is the popular children's story. And if you come horizontally here, Dhruva star is in Ursa Minor. It's a fixed Dhruva, no doubt, at the North Celestial Pole. If I go down up to 3000 BC, that is going to be the Taittirīya Āraṇyaka. Here also there is a fixed Dhruva at the North Celestial Pole, but this Dhruva is the Abhaya Dhruva, is the fearless Dhruva. Is the fearless Dhruva is who becomes the child prince in the Viṣṇu Purāṇa and the Brahmāṇḍa Purāṇa. Because without having any fear, he goes to the forest to do the penance, so on and so forth. And this 14th star, it is not the 7th as in the Ursa Minor, it is the 14th. And that is at the tail end called the Śiśumāra. Then you have the Taittirīya Samhita, you have the Maitrayani Āraṇyaka Upanishad. These are all the layered texts. Each text is layered. It is not only the Dhruva concept is stratified, texts themselves are stratified. So you have to make a very special three-dimensional connection to get all of this. And there are other parallel texts called the Parashara Tantram and the Vridagargya Jyotisha, which we have been editing right now in our center. They are also Sanskrit texts. They also know this. Unfortunately, those texts are not well studied, so they have been forgotten. They also know about this Dhruva moving. Then there is a text called the Atharvaveda Parishishta. This can be dated to 500 BC. That also knows the Śiśumāra, but in a very peculiar way. But in between, Mahabharata comes into picture, you can see. I have roughly put at 1500 BC. Mahabharata in the Bhishma Parva says, Dhruva prajolito goram apasavya pravartate. Dhruva is moving. He is one of the bad omen which is mentioned. Okay, keeping that only, you need not date the text. That is another matter. But the movement of that was known to whoever wrote that text at that period. And also, Mahabharata has a very interesting thing. It also knows the Śiśumāra. You know that the Draupadi Swayamvara took place, all of that stuff. No, I need not go into that. Where did it happen? The Adiparva says it happened not in the capital of Drupada. He built a new a Nagara for that called Śiśumāra Pura. So Śiśumāra Pura was built in the northeastern direction of Kampilya, of Drupada's capital. And that is where the Swayamvara took place. In other words, you see some similarity in the cultural things which have come over the centuries. Now the Grihya Sutram is there. I already mentioned this is for the Grihya rituals, or the marriage rituals. Then the Purāṇas come up here. Then the Shankaracharya is here somewhere in 800 CE. And you would see that in the 1500 CE, somewhere in 1500 AD or CE, there should have been some conflict between the mathematicians, that is the astronomers, and the Vedic people. So the Vedic people went on talking about Śiśumāra, Dhruva, Viṣṇu, and the Vedic commentaries and all that. There were a parallel group of people, Bhaskara, Brahmagupta, Aryabhata. Aryabhata doesn't say anything on this, Brahmagupta and several others. What kind of conflict they had, I have no idea. But they did not talk about Śiśumāra, but they borrowed Dhruva and Dhruvaka because it's a fixed point. Now, for the Vedic people, Dhruva is single, is only one star. Whereas Brahmagupta talks of Dhruvayoho Nibaddham, that is, it is the globe. There are 2 points, 2 Dhruvas, on which the whole thing is rotating. He wanted that model. So that is a point, whereas it is not a star at that place. So we have to see that in Sanskrit, the meaning can be same, the quality can be used as a name. So we have to carefully discriminate this. But they were very intelligent. They used it in 1500 CE to create a clock. It's called the Dhruva Brahma Yantra. This is available in Pune in the museums, where with the help of Ursa Minor, in the night, he wanted to see that the poles are connected with what we call Kokab, or the Sanskrit people call it Markati. That line keeps on rotating from evening, it is facing sun. In the morning, the other thing comes on that, and that can be used to measure 12 hours. So this yantra is still available in the museums. At the same time, there are other Vedics who created an image of Viṣṇu like this. This is actually a Śiśumāra. This is worshipped in some of the temples in Karnataka, even to this day, particularly among the Madhva Sampradaya people, where Viṣṇu is represented as a whale. The whole of Viṣṇu is a whale, and Dhruva is sitting at the top of the tile. And about, I have already told you about Alberuni, was an outsider who came in 11th century and understood both the Yoga Sutra. Perhaps Yoga Sutra belongs to 1000 BC or whatever. And what about the other cultures, the Jaina and the Bauddha? Bauddha I have not in detail seen, but there is a Jaina text called the Bhadrabahu Samhita, which knows Śiśumāra. Says if a comet hits Śiśumāra, some bad things are going to happen. That is always in the sky. So in other words, this is roughly the kind of stratigraphy which is there for Dhruva. So I come to my conclusion. Now, you may call Dhruva's story as a legend, you may call it mythology, you may call it children's story or grandmother's story or whatever you may like to call it, or ethno-astronomy. It can be gleaned that there are 2 distinct pole stars in our culture, evidenced in the textbooks. I'm not arguing or pleading for it. The first one in the Taittirīya Āraṇyaka, the second one in Kamalakara Bhatta's Siddhanta Tattva Viveka in 17th century, available in print, all of them, commented, discussed and all that. Now, any of these texts is going to be stratified, zigzag. But on the whole, if you take, you get a perspective, the backbone of chronology which is, of course, disturbed and perhaps broken here and there, but it's still visible. That is from 3000 BC up to 2000 AD. Thank you very much. This obviously overlaps with the Harappan chronology, which I have shown here on the other side. Thank you.